Hello viewers on YouTube. In this video tutorial, we are going to focus on finding the mode of a distribution. And we are going to typically focus on both grouped and ungrouped data or distribution. Now I want you to know that the mode tells us the data with the most highest frequency. That is the data that tends to occur mostly in that distribution. So how can we find it? Starting with ungrouped data. Consider this distribution. Feel free to pause the video and find the mode if you already know what to do. We said mode is simply the data that is the most common, okay, or the data that repeats itself mostly, or the data with the most highest frequency. Now the goal is just to identify the data that tends to repeat itself the highest in this distribution. Notice that in this case 3 is that data, so therefore our mode for this problem is simply equal to 3, and that's how to easily identify the mode of a distribution. On to example number 2. Consider the distribution. Find the mode of the distribution. So the goal, just like before, is to find the data that repeats itself most. But unfortunately, in this case, 8 repeats itself 2 times. But at the same time, same thing applies to 6. 6 also repeats itself 2 times. So which of them is the mode? When you encounter a situation like this, then both 8 and 6 are the mode. We call them by modal data. So sometimes you have 2 data that turns out to be the mode. Select both of them as the mode. Even if it is more than that, select them, as long as they repeat themselves the most highest in that distribution. Okay, perfect. So now, what about group data? What would be the mode of a group data, and how can we find it? So consider a frequency distribution tally table as shown on the board. Find the mode of the distribution. To find the mode of a group data, there's a formula that helps us to do that, and it's given as this. Let me use a plain white color. The mode, which we call the modal mark, is equal to L1 plus, in the bracket, D1 divided by D1 plus D2 multiplied by H. Now you might be wondering, what is all these letters? I will show you everything. They are values, and I'm going to show you in an easy way how to find those values and all those letters. So first, you have to know what the main lex is. L1 is simply the lower boundary of the modal class. Lower boundary of the modal class. D1 simply means excess frequency below the modal class. Excess frequency below the modal class. So below, I write as B. D2 simply means excess frequency above the modal class. So I write A as a frequency above modal class. While H simply means the class height. Now that you know what each quantity means, the next thing is to know how to find them. How can we find L1? To find L1, you need the modal class. Hopefully you have written down the formula because I've got rid of it. If not, you can just preview back so as you write it and then continue from where we stop. The modal class. Sometimes some problems will not ask you to find the mode, but just the class. Know the difference. The modal class is different from the modal mark. If you are to find the modal class, the goal is to focus on the frequency distribution tally table and identify the class interval that has the most highest frequency, which in this case is simply 10 to 14. It has the most highest frequency, which is 8. So the modal class is 10 to 14. So that's what you will do as well in the problem that requires you to find the modal class. But if the same modal mark, that's when you need to use the formula we discussed earlier. So please know the difference. So now that we have the modal class, This can help us to find L1, which is the lower boundary. To find the lower boundary, keep in mind that this is called the lower limit, while this is called the upper limit. Now, subtract 0.5 from the lower limit and add 0.5 to the upper limit. Doing this, all you are trying to do is that you are converting the class limit, because this is also called class limit, you are converting it into a class boundary. So therefore, we now have the class boundary to be 9.5, 10 minus 10 minus 0.5 is 9.5 to 14 plus 0.5, that's 14.5. Good. Now, you now have a class boundary where this is the lower class boundary, which is what we are looking for. So L1 is simply, 0.5, 9.5. So L1 is 9.5. Now, D1, we said is excess frequency below the modal class. So this is the frequency of the modal class, right? So all we need to do is to subtract the frequency below it. So 8 minus 6 is 2. So that is excess frequency below the modal class. Now D2 is excess frequency above the modal class. So that's 8 minus frequency above the modal class. Immediately above it, that's 8 minus 4. That's 4. Okay, please make sure that it is frequency immediately above it or the frequency immediately below it if you are finding D1 and D2 respectively. Now, class at H is simply the difference between lower limit and of the second class and the lower limit of the first class, or the upper limit of the second class and the upper limit of the first class. So 5 minus 0 gives us 5. 9 minus 4 will still gives you 5. Even if you do 14 minus 9, you will still have 5. So regardless, just make sure that you're using the corresponding limits. Okay, now that we have everything we need, you can find the modal mark. So modal mark equals L1, which is 9.5, plus D1, which is 2, divided by D1 plus D2, that's 2 plus 4, then multiply by class L, which is 5. This becomes 9.5 plus 2 over 6 times 5, which is 9.5 plus 10 over 6. So what is 10 over 6? That gives us 1.67. So therefore, we can say the mode equals 9.5 plus 1.67. We had them together, we got 11.16. 11.16 or 11.167. So that is our final answer to the mode, and that's how to easily find the mode of a group data. I hope you find this helpful and understandable. So this is your exercise, and feel free to share your solution with me via the comment section below. Find the mode, modal class, and the modal mark of the distribution. Share your solution via the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. See you in the next video.